All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. We are here. We're about to have a meaningful discussion in about voting, especially as it is particular to the young adult population. I'm excited about this conversation, and I'm really happy about the panel that we're going to have. We have myself. Of course, I'm Deron Harper. I'm an assistant pastor at Baketon Missionary Baptist Church. And one of the things that I've always noticed and realized is that we do have often, when it comes to voting time, our young adults don't vote their numbers. And I kind of want to have a discussion with young people about why that may be the case. All right. So I do have with me Miss Taylor, who's going to introduce herself. And I also have my friend, my brother, Mr. Dion Sherman, and I'll have him introduce himself also. So we'll first start off with Miss Taylor. You just introduce yourself, and then we're going to Mr. Dion. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, and whatever else you want people to know, and why voting is important to you, maybe.
Oh, great. Thank you. So, my name is Taylor. A lot of you know me as Nikki. So, if you hear one or the other, same person here. I have studied sociology, social work for years, to say the least. I have been passionate about voting and fairness for all people. Since my days at Baconton, I think that's probably where this all started, if we're honest. Why I'm passionate about voting. It is easy as a young person to get a little bit disenfranchised and not want to. But at the end of the day, if it's something they keep trying to take away from me, it sounds like something I should go do. So that's why I will make sure that my vote is in before December 6th. And every time I will make sure that my vote is ready to go because obviously they don't want me to. So, yeah.
Exactly. I kind of like that. If you're trying to take something from me, I definitely want it, so to speak. It's kind of like that red button that you show to children, or that candy you tell them not to eat. Or I'm a preacher, or that tree that you said you can have all of these trees, but except this one. I kind of want that one that you told me not to have. So let me get into this voting thing. Miss Dion, go ahead. My friend, my brother, we actually just met recently, again via church, so to speak. And we just want you to introduce yourself and tell us why voting is important for you.
Good evening. My name is Dion Sherman, and originally I was born in the Bahamas, raised in Chicago for the majority of my life. But for me, as a naturalized citizen, it's a big deal to vote. It's a big deal to get involved with the political process here in the country and take an active role in it. To me, it's a big deal. I think a lot of Americans don't, well, they take it for granted. They take it for granted all the freedoms and stuff that we have, and they don't understand that when we come from a foreign country, you don't have a lot of these freedoms that we have in this country. That's just my little 15 cents.
Yeah, no, that's actually awesome. That's actually something I just learned from you. As a naturalized citizen, you're actually coming in from the outside looking in theoretically, and even if you weren't of age at that time, to really understand the political system, you could still kind of reach back, be told by your parents or your grandparents or anything like that, of the struggles that they had, and then see a difference into the way, as you said, Americans kind of take for granted their liberties that they do have. So I kind of want to start there. Is Why is there such voting apathy that we do have, especially with young people? Why do you think that there is? And we'll start with you, Dion, and we'll go to Taylor.
In my opinion, I haven't done a study or any exact research, but in my opinion, I think a lot of people are undereducated as far as the way the political process works. On how it affects their lives. They don't realize how it affects their lives. You know, they just think, oh, the people just go out there and talk, and that's all they do is talk. They don't see that major decisions are made, and your life is affected seriously about these decisions that are being made, and you should want to take part in that process. And having some say in who's going to represent you and where you're from, if you will, and your thought process, your thinking, and that's just my little 15 cents.
Yes, sir. Good. That's a very valuable 15%, 15 cents there. Because the undereducation is a major deal, and we're going to touch on that in a little bit later too. But you're so right. That is one of the things that I do know and realize that happens. With a lot of people really don't know how things affect them. The majority of people vote during presidential elections. However, your midterms and your state elections and your local elections are the ones that really affect you quickest and probably more pertinent to you and how they really affect your lives. So it's really that under education, that piece there that you mentioned. Ms. Taylor, let us know from your opinion of why you think voting apathy is there.
All right, so there are two reasons I think that voting apathy is there, and I think they both kind of apply to the broader spectrum, but they also apply to young people specifically. So if you look at where the popular vote has gone, I think in the last 20 years, I'm really good about what's happened in my lifetime. Don't ask me too much about what happened before that. But in
Right.
my lifetime, in the last 20 years or so, when you look at what's where the popular vote has gone, I think only one of those times has that person actually become the president. The electoral college steps in and, you know, has its effect, and there's a large push to remove the electoral college. I'm not going to say whether or not I agree with that, but that's how that process works. So we see that and we get apathetic. What's the point? I'm one person out of 70 million people. Does my vote really matter? And that's a really easy thought process to go down until you start seeing those numbers go up and you start to see how close Stacey Abrams got to the office, and you start to see that when we actually get out here and we vote those numbers, that we can actually make the change that we want to see. And if you want the electoral college gone, you have to vote to get them out of there in the first place. Now, the other reason, I was in class the other day and we were watching a civil rights film, and our teacher, you know, she warned us. She was like, I know voting is tough right now. Things are really tough and it's unfair, but it's not as tough as what you're about to watch. So if you need to walk out, you know, have your moment. And in that moment, I was like, well, this is why we're so apathetic. This is why we haven't organized and formed a leadership that will make sure that our people are getting to the polls and our voices are heard, is because it's not as bad. It's bad, but it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. So to us, we're like, oh, it's good. They're not beating us in the lines and keeping us from registering to vote. So that seems good, even though it's still not fair or equitable. So that's why I would say we can be apathetic.
Right. Things are different and things are somewhat better. And that will actually cause us to relax, so to speak. One of the other things that I would like to mention would be it really seems like it takes a long time for Congress to do stuff. uh, Whether it is either the national or federal government, even your state government, or there are people that look across their street and maybe not see a park up to par. So even your local government sometimes, and again, not having an education of who do we talk to about that park? Is that park connected to the state, the county, or the federal government, so to speak, and what how do we actually fix the things in front of us, and knowing who to ask those questions. And so one of the things also that I want to ask is, what are ways that you think that we can actually get out the education to those? Because I really do think not only are things better now, and the struggle is not as great, so to speak, and then the education piece is not there also. But I think if people kind of knew like specifics, they would actually be more amped to vote. Like if they kind of knew like this is that thing that really can actually fix this thing. I was reading an article the other day that said that here in Georgia, the and I forget the official title, but the commissioner or state commissioner was not looking to expand I forget the wording, but not ready, not willing to expand the benefits of having solar panels on your house, or giving you credits and those things like that.
Wow.
And so again, that was a state legislature piece, and I also know that same particular position affects your utilities. So if you have a
Yes.
problem with your utilities, again, that's the electric, so to speak. He doesn't want to expand that, so to speak. However, also there's something there when it comes to like your internet. One of the things that we found out that really crushed a lot of students when this COVID thing happened was a lot of people didn't have fast enough internet and couldn't get fast enough internet in their particular communities. However, if that was a person that was on the ballot that they probably just didn't even realize. So how can we do more, if you will, in this time frame, 2022 and beyond? How can we educate our people to actually, hey, this is what this position, maybe not vote for this person, but this is what this position does, and this is how, if you're seeing this happen, this is how you go forward. Ms. Taylor, you want to go first there?
Yeah. So, hold on. What's the question again? How can we educate our people? Yes, you got to go where the people are. I think what I see when I look at our politicians is they're doing stuff the way that they used to do it. They're holding the rallies. They're having the speeches. And I just look at this and I go, why are you doing this? This is a waste of money. Everyone is on the internet. Why aren't you on the internet making your claims? The ads don't do it enough, because we can just go and Google whether or not what you're saying in your ad is true or not. You need to be on the internet and talking to the people. That's my message for politicians. I'm not saying stop the rallies, because in some communities that makes perfect sense. When those people aren't on the internet, go for it. But when you're talking to young people, we're not taking time out of our day to go hear our grandparents essentially talk about what they do at work and bring out our favorite artists while we do it. No, you send it to me on a music video or whatever it is. So I think that's one way that I think the parties need. The Democratic Party, I'm gonna get partisan. I was gonna ask if that's okay, but I'm gonna go ahead and get partisan. The Democratic Party has for a long time had a communication issue, and they're not talking to people. We don't know what they're doing, so it lets lies about what they might be doing go forth. So they need to be where the people are, whether that is rallies or on the internet or on the TV. They need to be where the people are, and they need to consistently make sure that the people have the facts about what it is that they're doing.
Amen. All right. Ms. Dion, what you got?
In my
How
opinion,
can we do it better? Go ahead.
like you said, just go out there and make it happen. I mean, whether it's going to setting up workshops and inviting people to come out, like the church, for example, using that. People used to do it back in the day. Use the church as a meeting place. People know, hey, come to church, we're gonna have a discussion. We want to know why you don't want to vote. Or create public forums. Why don't you want to vote? Like you said, make it nonpartisan, so nobody feels like, well, I have to speak from a Republican standpoint or a Democratic standpoint. They just come in and they just express themselves and feel freely to express however they want to feel. And you give them the opportunity to express their feelings, and give them opportunity to say whatever it is that is on their mind. Whether or not you agree with it, just let them have the option to vent and let loose. And then just explain to them how things work if they take part in it. Educate them. Help break it down preschool style. Because some of you need to break it down to them like that. You need to break it down preschool style. Yeah, they should have learned it, but some people didn't learn that way. Right. Some people don't have knowledge that way. Sometimes you have to bring things down to people's level. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and you're right that some people didn't learn, because even I can get to the point to where I say, well, you learned it in your civics class when you was younger, or whatever the case is. And when the truth of the matter is, we know that there's a difference in school zoning in education when it goes to funding and those things like that for specific areas. So you're right. There's some areas to where people want taught, so to speak, the basic ideas of the form of government. And Roland Martin, I listen to him. He always uses the term, you got to put it where the goats can get it. Because a lot of times, because you're right, Taylor, the Democrats have a real issue with messaging, and they talk to stuff where I can understand and I know because I follow it. But the Republican Party does a great job at saying this is bad and this is good, and this is why you vote for me. And that's and like you said, Dion, sometimes you just got to make it that simple. This is bad, this is good, go for it. And that's what the Republican Party does there. A lot of people are not looking at what is voted on. I will say for a fact that I'm going to make sure that my vote went towards Raphael Warnock today, just simply because I do know not one Republican voted for the George Floyd Policing Act. Not one Republican voted for the John Lewis Act to help us with our voting rights and those things like that. So for me, it's not necessarily a party; it's policy. For how who's
Exactly.
going to vote for this and who's going to vote for that. So it really is not that it's Raphael Warnock. It's just that I know that that party right now is going to do what I want them to do. A few years ago, the Republican went after Trump because they wanted conservative judges. And what do you got? And then the other thing that we get into sometimes is that we people will talk about how there are not there's the lesser two evils or whatever the case is, and we kind of have to get out of that too, because I do know this for a fact: had it been Hillary and not Trump, we would have three different judges right now, and we might not
Yes.
be in the limbo where if you support having Roe v. Wade extended or staying, that wouldn't be there. I also know that affirmative action would be heard of as far as litigated as it's been right now. So you're not voting for the lesser two evils. You're voting for policies and what you want your world to actually be like for your child and for yourself, honestly. So I think there's a like you said, if you kind of put it down there where people can kind of get like, oh, I do care about, because 2020 we see a whole bunch of police shootings. We seen a whole bunch of that stuff. So if you put it there to where, hey, this particular party didn't go that way, this one is. So what do you want, black people? Or if you don't want that, then make sure you vote that way. And I think that's the thing that gets a lot of people in trouble and why they're not really following it. Just simply because that's not put out that simple. Agree?
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm reading some of the comments. So if you guys have anything to insert, you go feel free do so. If not, I do want to touch on the point because Melanie said so did the church was a resource center back in the day, and it still can be. And kind of what Dion touched on was that having those the settings or the seminars to where you actually explain what was going on in whatever voting cycle that is going on, and the laws. How many of you have ever read a law on the ballot and you're like, what in the world is this even talking about? And why should I vote yes or no for it?
That's
And
intentional. Like, let's be clear. Politicians write it in a way so that it makes it seem like, oh, well, I should vote yes on this thing the way they worded it, even though it's going to enact the exact opposite of what you think you're voting yes for. That is not by accident. And that's one of those, like, now get nonpartisan. Both sides do it when they want something passed. So, yeah, sorry.
right. No, I appreciate that because you're 100% right. Both sides, we talk about gerrymandering. If it was the Democrats in charge of Georgia, the party lines would look a whole lot different too. And we could be mad at it the way that it looks now, but it would look totally different to where it didn't favor the other side too. So so you do have to kind of look at it, and then again, Melanie says here, you're not necessarily voting for you vote for policy, not necessarily the person or the people, and that's
Exactly.
just simply because whoever has power is going to do it, so to speak. And then I do like this also. Miss Kiddo says some people are not taught, and because it wasn't a priority for your parents. And I want to pull that out. And me and Dion are parents. Taylor, you're gonna get married one day and have a beautiful family. I got you. I speak that over your life right
I work
now.
with the babies.
Yeah, yeah. But that is a responsibility. I think we lost some for the connection, but that is a responsibility for us too, as parents. Is that we do have a responsibility to teach our children what our schools don't teach them. A lot of time we like to leave a lot of stuff up to the schools. And one, they're already overtaxed anyway, trying to keep up with whatever curriculum they got to do, just to do what somebody somewhere that don't know how school works down here
That's
makes
another
a
thing you got
decision.
to vote for. Those
Right.
decisions about what's happening in your school, you got to
Yes.
vote for it, and it doesn't stop when you are a senior.
Right, exactly. And that'd be our next question. But that I want to bring this thing down to me and Dion, because we're parents. That is a responsibility. And one of the things that I do, and I didn't do it today because I had to. I wanted to vote today, and I knew that I was going to kind of be in and out. But normally, what I always do, whether it's me or Melanie, is we take Naomi to vote, or when we vote, because we want her to see that process. We want her to kind of see that, hey, this is important. If mom and daddy is taking me here, then it has to be some kind of importance to it. So I take that serious as a parent, that it's not just up to the schools to kind of teach what this does and how this works and how this they have their right to do that, but they're also supposed to come home and kind of the parents are supposed to kind of help the students there. And you got a younger sister, Taylor, so you do know
Yeah,
the,
I'm
the
doing
importance
this.
of making sure that that the younger people do know the importance of voting.
Yeah, so I mean, even a few years ago when Trump was running, I was watching TV and the news with my sister, and she sees this mean ad. She goes, "That guy looks mean," and go, "Well, he is. You can vote for him to be there or not." Now she's a lot more older and she can see and make some opinion. So. Right before the elections, because I mean we don't live in the same city. I would love to take her to the polls with me. I think my mom does that though. But I go, so who do you think I should vote for? Now I have my opinion already, but I'm trying to get her engaged in this conversation. She goes, she's in eighth grade. She goes, I don't know. I don't care. I can't vote for that. I'll go, but in the next cycle, the next presidential cycle, you will be voting. So, or not the next one, but the next 4 years, she'll be eligible to vote. So I go, but who, just tell me what you think, because what's happening now is going to affect when you do get to the polls. And she goes, well, tell me about these people. So I give her some, very nonpartisan things. She goes, well, I like what Stacey's got to say on that. I like this idea. And I go, well, all right, that's your choice. But I want to make sure that she knows that she needs to know what's going on and give her the space to start making the decision herself.
Right. Yeah, and that is so, and I kind of like the way you say you did it, and asking what do you think about this, and and her seeing Trump at that time, oh, he's mean, because they have a sense of kind of understanding something is a little bit off. That sometimes children are smarter than us, with our degrees and all that, and just more in tune to realities theoretically, so to speak. So I do like you kind of asking, what do you think about that, Miss Dion? We was kind of talking about why is it important for you to kind of bring in your daughter, so to speak, and making sure that she understand, or do you think that it's important to making sure that your child understands the importance of voting?
Almost definitely. I make it a point, especially during this voting cycle. I made her sit down and watch the news, and I talked to her about it to get her to understand, at least get a basic understanding of what's going on. I mean, we don't teach them that; they never will. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like somebody said, somebody made a comment earlier. They said, some people's parents didn't teach them. They're right. Some people's parents didn't teach them.
Right.
Some people's parents, all they taught them was watching music videos or watching sports, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But some people don't think they know. I don't believe in politics. Politics makes no sense. Well, politics is your life.
Yeah.
Politics can affect every aspect of your life, whether you want to accept it or not. Once again, like we said earlier, it's important to teach that from the cradle all the way up. You know what I mean? I can remember growing up, they used to have a program on TV. What was it? I forgot what it was. Schoolhouse Rock.
There it is.
Yeah, I'm telling my age now, but
No, I remember that.
I watched it too, if that helps.
yeah. And you know, I don't know that off TV. I have no clue why they took that off TV. It's very important because they help people get a basic concept on how, you know, civics work. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I agree. Cause and like you said, I remember Schoolhouse Rock. And one of you know, everybody knows I'm just the bill. And you know
Yeah,
that what there. And then conjunction Johnson, what's your function? You know, even talking about
yeah,
grammar and all of that. You know, so but you're right. One of the things, and I think that it was kind of calculated, to be honest, is to kind of remove those things and make it more entertaining to do the smoke screen stuff for us, you know, with the
right.
entertainment industry and that, and to kind of get us off focus, if you will, of the thing that actually does harm us. So like you said, I've heard that too, when people say, well, I don't get into politics. Well, politics gets into you. And at the end of the day, whether you like I said earlier, you know, when we think about the utilities and those things like that. And I give the example when I spoke
Mhm.
at our church. You know, one of the things that was on the ballot this year was the insurance commissioner. And you know, I broke it down to where the idea of that, you know, that actually affects all of your insurance, from your car insurance to your home insurance, whatever insurance you got, renter's insurance, whatever insurance you got, your health insurance, all of that is affected by that particular person, and whatnot.
That's right.
And the example that I gave them is that if you don't think that's important to you, if I rent out my house and my insurance company raises my premium, guess what I'm gonna do to your rent? I'm
It's gonna
raising
go up.
your rent.
It's
Yeah, because I got to make one, I got to make that payment.
mm-hmm,
Two, I got to make a profit too. So,
mm-hmm.
so even when you think policy, you know, you don't get into politics, politics is going to get into you, and whatnot. And that those are the things that we really do have to make sure that people do understand. Is that you don't got to get into politics. You don't got to, but I guarantee when you ride down that road, it's gonna be all around you. You
Yep.
know, so but
Go
yeah,
to
so
the
I do
pit.
like that.
I want to give you another example for the way politics affects your day-to-day life, right? So a lot of people don't know this, but I like what Melanie said there. We no taxation without representation, right, Melanie? But the governor of Georgia selects the board of the University System of Georgia. They determine when the president says we want to raise rates, we want to get rid of rates, we want to keep these fees, we want to not keep these fees. It's the University System of Georgia that makes those decisions. So when it came down to safety issues, the University System of Georgia during pandemic said get their butts back in school and no, they don't have to wear masks when they're on campus. The University System of Georgia says that even though most of my classes are online, I still got to pay the same prices as if I went to school, used the facilities, rode the bus, went to the football games. My team don't never win, but I still got to pay these fees because the University System of Georgia that the governor of Georgia selects has to do that. So when we're talking to young people, those 18-year-olds who are like, this doesn't matter to me, you got to vote. This determines your next couple months right here and there. The other thing I was looking for when you saw me on my phone a second ago, you guys were talking about Schoolhouse Rock. There's another one. I played it for my after school kids and I played it for my sister. It's called We the People. It's on Netflix. It was produced by Obama, but the content is nonpartisan. Like I don't see anywhere you can argue this from either side. And it's music videos from all your favorite singers right now, just about how our government works. The fact that we have 9 justices on the Supreme Court, the fact that voting is a right, the fact that what it means to be a citizen, like all these things. It's in these music videos. Very matter of fact, it's called We the People. It's on Netflix, and you can pull up just the songs if you want on whatever music app you have.
Cool.
Awesome.
We'll check that.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out.
I like the songs just cause, but
I mean, yeah. I mean, hey, look. I know. If you've just been around children with this new age of technology, I mean, they got Coco Melon, they got Gracie Corner. I mean, they be getting down. And I was talking to somebody the other day. Everybody's mad that I grew up on A, B, and C. I'm like, but man, when you hear what they get out now, this is awesome. So I'm not really too connected, but that is so true, and I really do want to commend you, Taylor, on even breaking it down to the the board of universities, because you're right. A lot of people don't know that, and how those boards are actually selected, and by the governor. So when you vote for a governor, you're voting for this and these extension of these things. So that is definitely poised to kind of make sure that people do know and understand that. So if anything, I'm this thing records a little bit. I'm going to clip that and make sure that I put that out, make sure that everybody knows that, because that is just the thing. And one of the things that because I get to sit in a lot of spaces, whereas the people who say that we need to get young people to vote, and I'm usually the youngest one in there by a couple years, if not decades, so to speak. And so one of the things that I always just kind of get agitated in sitting in those spaces, is that y'all say y'all want young people to vote. Y'all say y'all want young people to be involved, whether it's from 18 to even, because I would even push that really the age bracket that we really need is that 18 to 50-ish range there. And that's a wide range there, so to speak, especially when it comes to establishing life as an adult at 18 and going to education and trying to figure out life from a personal identity standpoint. And then when you get about the 25, life changes even a little bit more, because then you're starting to actually figure out life theoretically in some senses, and then you get to 30 and then life really happens. So there's a lot of stuff that happens in those years, and but there's a lot of times where there's our elders who wants us there, and I think there's a two dynamic thing to where they don't know where to go get the young people, and then the young people don't know where to go to actually sit in these meetings, to where they actually hear from young people about how to actually get them out and push the vote, so to speak. So my question now would be, what are some ways that you would be interested in for some of these groups that do have the elders there, that are mostly there, to get us young people that they say they want involved? And either one of y'all can go there. I forgot who I called on last.
Well, in my opinion, first of all, like you said, and that's something I've noticed. I've noticed that here in Georgia, for example, here in Gum Branch, where I'm at, nothing comes out here. Nothing, no information is put out. I wasn't given the information. For some odd reason, it's like there's a blockage. It's like someone is not. It's like I'm gonna be honest. It's like if you're not in a certain clique, or if you're not in a certain church, you're not going to get the information that you need to be able to find out what you got to do to get involved.
Right.
That's just from the outside looking at what I've noticed. I go to the barbershop. I never see anybody come in the shop and tell people, "Hey, look, like when Stacey Abrams came here to the Midway, no one came to the barbershop and said, "Hey, are you guys aware that Stacey Abrams coming to Midway?" To get people riled up and get them ready to come out there to support. No one came out and did that. Why?
I hear you, man, and I'm glad. And you keep saying you're the outside looking in, but that's the answer that we need, because it's a lot of times one of the reasons why things don't change is because it's a lot of the times where the people on the inside, well, we've been doing it this way, and kind of like what Nikki was talking about. And I said Nikki, it's kind of what Nikki said earlier. Is that there's this new thing out there, to where it's called the internet. To where a lot of people are actually on that and kind of watching. Everybody's on their phone. Everybody's kind of looking at, and you find, and it's, and somehow we're shocked that somebody gets misinformation and they take that and run with it. But no, that's because it was close to them, and so to speak, and didn't have anybody to kind of challenge that. And you guys are friends with me on Facebook. One of the things I do is I put things out there that challenge this thought. Not necessarily that I want you to believe what I believe, but I just at least want you thinking. I just want your thought to be challenged from where you're actually sitting at in your thought corner, so to speak. But you're right that they get in those if you get in those clicks, as you put it, Mr. Dion, and that's where it is, and that's how it looks like from the outside looking in. And I really do appreciate you saying that. And I'm going to take that back to the circles that I sit in, because we're going to make sure we get to the barber shops, the beauty shops, the parks. We just going to be there randomly, and not just when it's voting time. I think
Exactly.
that's the other thing is we wait till it's voting time to where, like, no, we needed to know, because after December 6th, we need to continue that same thing going on, that same drive. Maybe not every week, maybe not every month even, but at least every quarter have something going on to where there's some kind of education being put out there. So I really do appreciate that, and we're going to do that. I'm just say that.
I
Taylor,
think
what?
that's a great idea, Duran. And I think what you should include when you go out there is say this is what the people you represent are doing. This is what the people who represent this area are doing. This is the people who represent Georgia are doing. Because I find I get really frustrated. Like I was saying earlier, that the lies can grow so big because we just don't know what our people are doing. Whether we voted for them or not, we need to know what the people in Congress, in at the state level, or at the local level, or at national level, are doing. And back to what you were saying about how to get that information out there. I live in Atlanta now. I don't have any family out here, so when I need to know some information, I don't call up family or anybody that I grew up with, because they're all in Hinesville. I go on Instagram. When I need to find a new hairstylist, I go on Instagram. When I need to find even a new church, I go on Instagram. And what I find, I like old school churches. When I when I try to find them old school churches on Instagram, they're not there. So I think the young people need to come up and help the older generation access that information too. That older generation who's running things right now needs to be putting that information out there so that we can access it. For me, I'm old soul. I'm listening to NPR all the time, so I've already got the information. But in general, I'm not the only one who, when I want to know information, I want to know what an experience is going to be like. I don't go to Google. I don't phone a friend. I go to whatever social media I'm using.
So you're saying that there needs to be a collaboration between the old and young generation?
Right.
Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure I could find some statistics in any area that when you start to see the old and young collaborate, you start to see some really good things happening.
Right. Because one of the things that and I asked that question facetiously, but I really wanted people to kind of hear it, and kind of in that plain term, just simply because, and you're right, I'm sure that there's a statistic out there that says, hey, one, when people get together, and whether black, white, young or old, male or female, when people get together, and that's why you really see a division in the politics right now, because they realize this: if the people find out that if they all vote collectively about their neighbor versus about what a particular person told them to believe about their neighbor, they will probably vote more right. To where it help them out. You think back when the affordable healthcare thing came out, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, your premiums went up. This is that. And, Obama did this and that. Da da da." Not realizing, especially in Georgia, your state is Republican ran. So guess what happens? Your insurances are actually more directly connected to your state legislation. And so
Yeah.
if somebody don't like the Democrat, or if it was a Republican that did the Affordable Health Care Act, if it was a Democratic legislation in the state of Georgia, they didn't like the president. Hey, we're not going to do anything to adjust your premiums. Matter of fact, we're going to give free reign to all your insurance companies and let them do whatever it is they're going to do. We're going to allow them to say whatever networks or whatever doctor within that network, you discontinue that if you don't want to. We're going to give them free reign and unregulate them theoretically so that they can actually do whatever it is that they want to do. And again, that is something that is directly tied to us that we really just don't realize. And it kind of goes back to, kind of that question is, if we kind of just learn a way to get out that information, like, no, it's not that simple. It's not just that a bill get passed in Washington, then it affects Georgia or affects Mississippi or affects California. No, there's some people that decide what happens with that particular bill to how it's going to affect that particular state. And that's where that little downfall goes there too. So I really do appreciate this conversation because it's really giving me some ideas. You had something, sir?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that kind of frustrated me was it was all in the news that the court said that because of the runoff that they were going to allow voting on Saturday, but here in Liberty County, for one reason or another, I went to the polls. The polls were all closed.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday morning, they were all closed. So I called the 866 vote now, whatever the number is. I can't remember the top of my head. And I'm like, what's going on? Why are the voting polls closed? And it was explained to me that that the media didn't explain properly that didn't affect all counties. Okay, but once again, I'm looking at the news and I see in Chatham County,
Right.
they're voting. That's like a spitball away from Liberty County. What's the problem? So this morning I go vote, and then I asked the gentleman, sir, out of curiosity, how come you guys weren't open Saturday? That man looked me dead in my eye. We were closed because everybody couldn't be here to work the polls. To me, that sounds like bot fodder. Right. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I used to kind of curve when I was in profanity. But it sounded like bot the father, you know what I'm saying? And
right.
I'm saying, I'm not going to go deep into it. I'm here now. But in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if you have people who work the polls going away for the holidays, you still have people, because I know you got people who apply to work part-time. I'm one of them. I tried to apply to work part-time for the polls. No one ever contacted me for an interview. No one ever contacted me. They're going to train you so you can be on standby just in case.
Right.
It's so simple. That dog is not
right. Right, and you're right, because when you really kind of get out there, and this is one of the things I kind of when I do get into discussing with people, is that one of the things that I don't do is I kind of just don't sit and just see stuff happen, whether it's in the distance, online, or whatever the case might be, but just kind of being out there in the midst. We do have, each county had the right to make that decision, especially when the judge came back out and said, no, let them vote on Saturday. Let there be a Saturday vote and whatnot. And I'm gonna go real deep on that one in just a second. So Taylor, if you got a thought, just hang on to it, okay?
Yeah. I missed the oh, you said hang on to it. Okay.
Yeah. Hang on to it, and because I'm pretty sure we'll just kind of track the same. So the judge did come back and say, hey, it was there. But then what they did was it kind of let the counties make the decision. We had somebody that I know personally that went and actually talked to our local board to ask for a Saturday vote. And the reason why you have a 7-7 vote on Monday and Friday, because that was the compromise, if you will, so to speak. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that was the compromise that they made at that point. But you do bring up a great point into where, hey, I volunteer. I'm a part of this younger generation, whatever the case might be, and I want to make sure that I actually are able and access the vote. But also, what we need to understand is kind of go back to how we got to this point to even have an election on December the 6th. Too many of y'all voted in January 2021 for that runoff. So what happened was that there was a certain people again. And all we did was just Georgia put all of them folk back in office that made that decision to only give 1 week for early voting, and then not only for 1 week for early voting, to be eligible to vote, if you wasn't registered to vote for a runoff, you had to be registered by November 7th, which is the day before the last election cycle. How you gonna know there was a runoff, so to speak, in that term? But they did that for that reason because too many people voted again that time. But however, nobody looked at that again, voting for people and party and not looking at policy about, hey, no, this don't affect just black folk. This affected a whole bunch of white rural folk too. And this is the thing that, it's kind of um I'm gonna be real quick with this one, but one of the things we was having discussion before, and I was kind of talking about the ideology of the slave catcher and the slave, how the slave catcher wasn't really a worthy person to the plantation owner, so to speak. There was the plantation owner seeing the slave catcher in the same level, so to speak, as a slave. They was less important. They was not as valuable. However, what the plantation owner did was say, "Hey, you go out and get the slaves, and I'll make you feel like you're more important than the slave, as long as you have there." And one of the things that you have happen in America is you have a whole bunch of poor white people think they're better than poor black people, if not black people. And instead of, again, working together, as we kind of already talked again, to where you kind of see stuff like that happening and just say, hey, no, that just is not right. So because you did that, I'm just going to vote you out so that you understand that your power rests in me, so to speak, and as a citizen, as a citizen or a resident of Georgia. And I think that's what we don't do enough as a people and residents of Georgia. It's not always a black and white thing, but we make it that, and sometimes instead of coming together. So I do appreciate you kind of bring that up, and we'll make sure we fix that too, Mr. Sermon. Taylor, what you got?
A whole lot of stuff.
Go ahead.
So I think one of the things I was so glad to hear Dion saying that he was yeah, I saw that too. That he tried to sign up to work the poll, to be a poll worker. And I think that's one of the ways we've been talking about how do we reach the young people. But I think that is a way that young people can step up. If you've got the time, you're working part-time, whatever it is that your life allows you to, I think that is a great way to get civically active and see how the system actually works. That's one thing. There was something else. The runoff. You mentioned the runoff. I have something to say on that, but I have to fact check myself before I can mention the runoff. Just go vote before December 6th. Oh, I remember. Sorry, you're watching my stream of consciousness now. So I had the same thing that Deanne did. We're watching the news. We're watching people go back and forth about whether or not we can vote on Saturday. For me, I was just like, this isn't safe. I don't trust my vote. They're fighting on it for the weekend. I'm so glad so many people have, but for me, I was like, I will take it on a weekday that they're not fighting over, so I can make sure and guarantee that my vote is done. I didn't even get the news that they did finally allow Saturday voting until I was driving by a voting location on Saturday and thought, oh, I can go vote today. Well, wasn't in my plans. I'm going to go on Monday. And then is it okay if I respond to what Tia said, or do you want to do that, Duran?
No, go ahead.
All right, so Tia says, in my opinion, this was another form of voter suppression because Black people are twice as likely to vote on a weekend. And Tia, I will look at the evidence of history and say, you are probably right. I can't defend it today, but history shows a pattern that you are exactly right. When the voting rights legislation was turned over, I think, what was it, 2012? Maybe it was after that.
2013, 2012, 2013, somewhere around there.
One of the Supreme Court justices looked at North Carolina's new voting laws and said that this is, they called the voter suppression that they did there surgically precise, how much they were able to do. What I see when I look at policy from the Reconstruction era to now, when they want to suppress people, they want to keep them from voting, they want to keep them from access to education, whatever it may be, they're really good at wording the law in a certain way that it says, oh, well, this applies to everyone, and we're just doing this for the public good. You should want people who can read to be able to vote. However, when you find the meeting notes where they came up with that idea, they will explicitly often say, yes, we want to put this reading thing in here because we know Black people, we haven't let them get education for the last 50, 100 years. So we're going to make sure that we include that. And then what I find in civil rights legislation, they do such a good job, they go back and correct it. But what they do is they say, we are going to correct the thing that we did to Black people and make equality for all. But because the civil rights legislation decided to name a group, it becomes an easier target. Oh, well, you called out one group, so now it's unfair for all. Even though practically you can look at the facts, you can look at the numbers. You have judges calling it out today that things are not equitable. You can look at the facts and numbers and see that we know that we're doing the right thing. We know that we're doing things to create equality for all by making equitable policies. There's a difference. But what makes it easier to fight is because of the language that's being used in racist legislation versus anti-racist legislation. Anti-racist legislation is usually very clear about the group that they're targeting, but because the racist legislation is subversive, it is not as clear. And so it makes it easier to stay on the books longer.
Yes. Thank you for that walkthrough there. You sound like you are studying stuff, and I really appreciate you. Because you just just kind of walking down and kind of tracking that, so to speak. And how I think one of the dumbest things that we do, especially in the Black community, is that we really find it hard to look at history, and in some ways I kind of understand that, but you have to. Because we got to this point to where one of the things where people don't recognize it, as Ms. Kittle says, with the voter suppression, because one of the things that people mess up on with the definition of suppression is they think that it means stop. And that's not what suppression means. Suppression means to really what it says in the word suppress, slow down, kind of trickle out, so to speak. Exactly. So anyway, to make it harder, so to speak, that's what voter suppression is. It's a tactic to make sure less people vote. And theoretically, historically speaking, I heard a stat. There's 10 million people in Georgia. I can't remember the 6 million that are registered, I think, somewhere around there, and I'm rounding numbers, and only 4 million voted. So there's this thing to where part of voter suppression too is how can we make people less comfortable to vote, whether it comes to via education, not having education, not knowing what you're looking at. Why in the world are we even using the word incumbent? Why can't we just use the word already seated? I mean, the things that where everybody's going to understand what that means. I know what it means, and I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence or anything like that, but if I go in knowing what incumbent mean and already seated, I'm even more comfortable with that word. So, so I'm just there with it, so all of that, how can I scare people into making them feel inferior to vote? And I think that's part of the reason why there is a lot of people, and you see that disparity. And then there's just some people that just not going to do it. Jesus even said the poor be with you always, let the dead bury the dead. That's in the Bible, that scripture or text, so to speak, and that could be kind of used, if you will, if it was exegeted right, to where we kind of use it in that vernacular. However, that doesn't mean that we should be okay with it. And we should want to find ways to where we try to get one more person to vote, so to speak. Each one teach one, so to speak, or each one reach one. All of that kind of resonates even when it comes to the voting idea, so to speak. So does anybody have any closing thoughts before we close out? I told Nikki I got an hour, and I'm usually good for an hour. After about an hour, I start not thinking properly, and yeah. So anybody with closing thoughts before we kind of close this thing out?
My thing would be if you know better, do better. If you know better, go out there and strike a conversation with a stranger. You know, ask them, hey, did you vote? Oh, really? Why?
Mhm.
You did? Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, you didn't? Why not? No, I'm just curious. Not trying to pass on judgment. Just curious why you felt the need not to vote. You
Right.
know, and take the time to educate them. Because if you
Right.
know better, you do better.
Right. And I like the way you kind of put that because, not bash them, because it ain't like it ain't like because, in the description I put, anybody tired of the way the government is. I'm tired of the way the government is, and yes, I vote. So, yeah, so we could all understand, why people may not want to vote, so to speak. And, like you
Mhm.
said, the education piece will actually definitely help them out to get to that point to where you push past being tired of voting or being tired of the way the politics are going, so to speak. So you're right. Make sure you just be nice to people. Just be nice to people. That's all you got to do. So I appreciate you saying that. All right, Ms. Taylor, what you got? And then not before, but before you close out, make sure or you get to your last period, make sure you explain what that see her means.
Oh, okay.
Right. So give your closing thoughts of what we talked about and explain that she heard to me.
Okay, so sorry, my mind is all jumbled and all over the place. So thank you guys so much for following my stream of consciousness until I got to the point. Duran, thank you for putting this together. Anytime we get to actually have a meaningful conversation that's going to benefit our people, I'm down. Anybody watching, I recommend go be an educated voter. The polls close December 6th, I think at 7 p.m. If you don't know who you're going to vote for, turn off the political ads. Go to branch.vote or Ballotopedia, a nonpartisan thing that's just going to give you the information you need to vote for who you're going to vote for. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm voting for Warnock because since Stacey Abrams didn't get it, we got to get some hospitals back here in Georgia. So I'm voting for Warnock. I highly recommend everyone votes for Warnock because I like the policy. We're voting for policies, not people. I fully agree with that. Now, the her, I put it there because while I identify as a woman and other people I obviously identify as a man, everybody does not identify as what you think they look like. And whether you agree with what they're going to choose to identify as or not, um, they don't go by the pronouns that you might think they have. So you might look at someone, they look like a man, they go by she, her. So instead of just being like, what do you do? I'm joining the conversation of the LGBTQ plus community and saying, hey, not only are you, I'm going to ask you who you are and what you look like and what you do, what's your pronouns. I'm going to be an advocate and I'm going to start putting my pronouns next to my name when I come into a room. So on my email, my pronouns are there. On anything I do, my pronouns are there. I recognize this is a nice churchy community and that might go over some of y'all heads, but in general, everybody just not what you might assume them to be. So just like I say, hi, my name is Taylor Price, I'm also going to say I'm a woman because some people that makes them feel comfortable and safer to come into your space and do that.
I appreciate that, and we're going to have to come back and have a conversation about that because I would love to actually have the deeper conversations to where stuff really, really get expanded out. Because one of the things that yeah, I'm a preacher. I'm an assistant pastor, but I'm also my day job, if you will, is a counselor. And I get to see a lot of stuff to where people may not agree with, but that still hurts them,
Yeah.
so to speak. And it's really
Mhm.
and it can be damaging. So I do appreciate that. And if you guys are game, maybe this is just something that has just been birthed. I don't know, because I really enjoyed this conversation. And I really enjoyed the perspective that came of that. So if you guys are game, I would love it. And I won't say it happened next week. I won't say it happened next month. You give people a time frame, then they're going to be asking you why didn't it happen? So just know that it can happen again. So if you guys are game, I would love to have you guys back.
I'm down.
Yeah, so because one of the things that I did want to make sure that we kind of continue is making sure that we continue to have a conversation throughout voting election cycles, and so to speak, so when things happen, and so maybe that's our job, so to speak. So when things happen, when votes happen, when the decision is made on the Supreme Court, this is the explanation that we have for it, or maybe not even the explanation, but this is what the Supreme Court actually did. Kind of like the Roe v. Wade thing. A lot of people, like, oh yeah, we support abortion, when Roe v. Wade was really about patient privacy, more or less, than just about having an abortion. And a lot of people just ran away with that, not understanding, hey, that's a big thing when you work in the medical field, to have patient privacy. So that was actually part of that, so to speak. So I would love to have to continue to have these conversations, because I think they're meaningful, and I think that's what people want. And man, if you're in the comment section, go ahead and put yes, that's what you want. I don't know how to do this YouTube thing yet. I'm going to get it, and we'll work it out. But I do appreciate everybody for joining us tonight, having this discussion, and please share it with somebody, so they can kind of hear what we talked about, how we kind of really dug into a lot of the things. A lot of it might have seemed a little bit random, but it is what happened, so to speak. Is what happened over the course of the years. And so we just need to make sure that you share it with anybody, share it with a young person, share it with an elder, because one of the things I do is I challenge everybody, young or old, and I want to make sure that our elders understand that, yes, you can call on us, but make sure you call on us. Don't just say we're not there, but never picked up a phone to call us. So make sure that you do that. Amen. All right. Well, we're good to go, y'all. Again, I appreciate everybody, and y'all have a great and excellent night.